Hello, my name is Megara Kastner. I'm part of the ODL team here at Employers Council. Today we're going to talk about what does it mean to manage change. And there's two distinct parts you need to consider right from the beginning. First, change is the event. It's the moment in time when something becomes different. And there's the transition. This is how people go through that change. How do they physically, emotionally, and psychologically make that change extend over the period of time? We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So first, let's cover these 4 steps. The first step is visualize. Ask yourself, how well have you and your executive team actually created that vision of how it's going to be wholly different in the future because of this change? It's very important to have that, and that you can communicate it all the way down, all the way across, so that every employee in their own words can picture that vision and make the change. That's part 1. Part 2 is the plan, that you have a plan, and this is a little bit paradoxical. There's 2 pieces to the plan. 1, it needs to be concrete, and 2, it needs to be flexible. It becomes the roadmap forward, so all can believe in the change, all can envision the change, and all can engage in the change as you're going along. The third piece is implement. Have you set up timelines, benchmarks? Is there some room for some creativity? Because within that implementation, as soon as you pass that change on to others, what's going to happen is everybody has their own way of transitioning in that change. So there has to be room in your implementation plan to also have some creativity. And then here's the important part that I think is absolutely the most important is how do you celebrate each milestone? Do you have some formal and informal celebrations? We've reached this point in the change process. We've reached this point. Now, let's take 1 extra minute and talk about the transition and what that means. Again, this is the psychological, the emotional, and the physical part of change. Timing is different for each employee. Some people just drop right into it. Great, I've been waiting for this. Some people, not so much. Others, I hate to say this, actually never make the transition. They're stuck in the past. So part of what you have to be able to do as a company, as an organization, and as the leaders is be able to be flexible enough to help with those transitions, realizing that people are going to be doing it different. And this is the piece, this transition piece is what companies and leadership tend to forget the most. All right, as you're trying to manage change, there's 3 cautionary notes that we want to be able to cover here quickly. And I've talked about this a little bit. Let's take it a step farther. There's a lack of a clear vision. So here's what often happens. At that senior executive level, you know what the change is. You've got the vision. You've probably been working it for months or years before you actually start to implement the change. So here's the key piece, is you need to make sure that all the employees, again, going down and going out, can picture that clear vision, that they are able to speak it in their own words so that they are able to implement it. So your first cautionary note, ask yourself, is there a clear vision? Where are we still lacking? The second cautionary note that you need to consider, questions that you need to ask yourself is this. Too much focus. Often when people are strategically putting together a change management system, they spend a lot of time in too much focus on the financials. How much is it going to cost? How are we going to roll this out? And the operational. What are all the steps? What are all those benchmarks that I asked you about earlier? All of those pieces, you get so caught up in that logistical and pragmatic side that, again, you forget about the people. And it's the people that are going to make that change. Here's the third cautionary note you need to consider as you're putting together your change management strategy. Too little communication. Again, here's the hard part. You have envisioned this as leadership for a long, long time. What you need to make sure is that there's enough communication opportunities for everyone at all the different levels within your organization. People have a hard time understanding change, going through that transition. They need to be heard and they need to be understood. You need to have some flexibility and time to be able to do this in getting them involved in that to make sure it can all occur. So please ask yourself this: have we set up enough communication opportunities for people to explain the impact this change is having on them? All right, we've gotten through the 3 cautionary pieces. Now let's go bigger and more broad again to look at a couple of things first. Let's start here with culture. How does your organization define their culture? Can you define it? Is it more of a culture that comes from top down, bottom up, hierarchical, traditional? Is it more of a flat organization where there's many leaders, or is it a combination of both? You have to be able to understand your organizational culture to really be able to launch and support that strategic plan in your change management as you're going along. What's formal and what's informal. Now let's take a couple of minutes and talk about leadership strategy, because there needs to be a complete strategy that you're going to do this, and it has to cover all levels. I'm going to start from the top. At that executive level, you know that. You've created the plan. You've had the plan going for a while. Now it's just a matter of implementing that change process. So it's pretty obvious you created it. Then you have that upper management level. These people are closest to the top, so they can probably communicate that vision and that plan pretty succinctly with what the executive level has going. Now I want to take a moment and talk about this mid-management level. This is where things can get lost. This is where things can start to get a little convoluted. This is where things can get diluted. These mid-management folks, they have to be able to communicate down what you're bringing in, and they have to be able to communicate back up to you. So sometimes the messages can be mixed. Strategy here for this mid-management is, do they have support? Have you set up mentorships for them? Have you set up ways that they can talk with each other? So there's an opportunity to be able to vent their pieces and help manage change for that mid-management level. Below that, you have the frontline supervisors. These are the people that are going to carry out that vision for you. They're the ones that have to explain it to the next level, the frontline workers, because they're the ones actually doing the job. So you have all these different levels: frontline workers, frontline supervisors, mid-management, upper management, and executive. What's your leadership strategy to support through this whole process? Now, there's one other piece I want to add here that often gets forgotten too. And it's those informal leaders, not the ones with the titles. Who are the informal leaders? The one that actually probably have a lot of influence that doesn't look so formal. They're the ones that often get work done. They're the ones that you can use as champions to help with your leadership strategy, with your change management. So don't forget those informal leaders. You cover all of those bases, and you're on the right road for change management.